Hello and welcome to
Josh RPGs!
Hi guys, we are going to be talking about JRPGs, specifically JRPGs old versus new. With Persona 5 on the horizon and Final Fantasy XV on the horizon as well. I figured this is
and Horizon Zero Dawn on the horizon.
We decided that we were going to talk a little bit about JRPGs, specifically old JRPGs versus new, and kind of just like our favorites. But like, if for example you go back and play Final Fantasy II or Final Fantasy 3/6,
which you can get on your Android or iPhone.
Yeah, or Chrono Trigger, or Breath of Fire 1 and 2, Wild Arms 1, 2, or 4. They all have this distinct feel. And they all have this distinct persona about them, but not persona. They all have this distinct feel about them, and it's kind of this very low fantasy, down-to-earth feel. Newer JRPGs necessarily don't. Specifically, talking about the Square Enix JRPGs.
Square Enix.
And I think it really got its worst at Final Fantasy XIII. That was kind of where...
It was trying to be something that it wasn't, which is fine, and I like that they tried something different, but the first 20 hours of that game are hard to get through.
And even taking away from like a technical aspect, going strictly aesthetically, what the f*** are they wearing in those games? The JRPGs of PlayStation 1 generation, even early PlayStation 2 generation with like Dragon Warrior 7, they have the kind of stereotypical anime outfits, but they're not that anime. And like, they're not over the top, which I think right around Final Fantasy XIII 1, you kind of got into. And that's where you, like, the bikini male became like a really big hot topic.
Right, and that's where, it's like, how's it practical?
It's just, it kind of boils down to the high fantasy versus low fantasy argument, especially with a lot of JRPGs. And that's why I'm really excited for Final Fantasy 15. Because...
because it allows you, it seems from the start, it's an open world.
Yeah.
And obviously there's an overarching story, but it allows you almost in the vein of like Monster Hunter, where you see these behemoths, you see everything right there, and you're like, do I want to attack it?
Yeah.
Which was what 13 did later on a little bit, but just not as good. When you first start off that game, you don't know who any of these characters are, and they expect you almost to know who they are. And then, like, they're trying to build the story later on to catch up who they are, and you're just like, by the time, like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to finish this game so I can finish it.
And I mean, convoluted stories have kind of always been a staple of JRPGs as a genre.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, but...
Recently, they've gotten kind of out of hand. Like, specifically talking Final Fantasy 13, 1, 2, or, like, 13, 13, 2, and 13 Lightning Returns. The stories in those games, they're like, they make no sense.
Yeah. I mean, even after beating 13, I'm like, I don't know what just happened. And then going into 13-2, it's like, I don't know what's going on. Why do I care about this shit?
Specifically, pointing my finger at Persona, the Persona franchise, there's so much there. You have all you have all the Persona games. You have like Catherine. You have the dancing side games, and you have the Shin Megami Tensei games, and like it's just a lot. And it's weird. It sounds weird coming from like a comic book fan, but
it's almost over the top sometimes. Yeah. It's like, okay, I get it. It's almost like the High School of the Dead aspect, where it's like the show is actually pretty decent, but then you show us like a shot of like the boobs for no apparent. Yeah. It's just like that over the top, where we get it, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
Like, just give me a good story where I care about these characters. I'll play it for 100 hours if you keep me entertained.
And I think recently that's what Bravely Default was. That's kind of
that was kind of refreshing.
Yeah, because you have this classic turn-based style, and you have this interesting, unique aesthetic appeal to it.
Yeah.
Where, and you had this really good, simple but good story.
Yeah.
And apparently that's what I Am Setsuna has.
That's what I've heard. Really if you like Bravely Default, you'll like this game.
And I've heard that it's kind of the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. Which, please, I want a new Chrono.
It makes me want to play even more now.
Yeah,
but
Chrono Cross is great. Not a lot of people played it. Chrono Cross is great. The direct sequel to Chrono Trigger.
Is good.
And I just want another game in that series.
Yeah.
Same with like Secret of Mana.
Well, I think you need to start out when you... I hate saying that you need to almost origin story or somebody, but give me like, okay, for 8, when it opens up, you see this battle between these two guys.
Yeah.
And they're fighting, he gets hurt, you wake up in the hospital. You know, do you know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, that's what happens. And then you learn about everybody else. Like that, I know it can be overdone, but like, give me something to where I get to learn who this character is.
Yeah.
And keep me engaged. And that's the problem with like all RPGs nowadays, is that they're not as engaging as they need to be.
They're not. And I think Final Fantasy X was kind of the time period that lost me. Because halfway at the end of Final Fantasy X, you're like, wait, you mean to tell me that I'm a dream?
Well, that's the thing, yeah. It's like, it's so hard to believe, too.
Yeah.
I liked that story. It was cool. It's like, oh, okay. And like, you remastered it 15 times.
This is kind of where I'm coming at with Persona 5 specifically and Final Fantasy 15. You guys have a possibility. Those two games, they're two of the biggest JRPGs coming out.
This year, right?
This year.
Yeah.
And two of the biggest JRPG franchises are releasing new games, which previously haven't been released, haven't released any games in a while. And they alone have the ability to save and change the way the JRPGs are going. Because right now, JRPGs are kind of a joke.
They can be. I mean, there definitely are still some good ones coming out, but no.
Ni no Kuni was really the last good JRPG I can think of that I played. Tales of Symphonia specifically was very good, and I think that game is kind of the perfect example of how to combine old school JRPG
with a new
nostalgia with putting a new spin on it. I mean, you have a really interesting combat system, you have good, likable characters, you have fully animated cutscenes, and you have the top-down perspective like most traditional JRPGs have. And I like the direction that Final Fantasy is going in, taking cues from Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with the combat system, it's almost making it not a traditional JRPG, which isn't necessarily
it's adding, like I said, it's adding that Monster Hunter aspect of it, where you can see and attack around
and that's
over
really
one
cool.
motion.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not classic JRPG, which, again, I'm okay with that.
I am too.
Basically, what it boils down to is I don't want to be spending 120 hours on a game for it to ultimately let me down. Because recently...
I want a game that allows me to be able to play it for 120 hours, not...
Final Fantasy VI
25.
is a perfect example of that. I played Final Fantasy VI for 45 hours. Granted, about 20 of that was just grinding. But I want that to come back because I haven't played a JRPG in a while.
That keeps you wanting to keep
keep
going.
Me entertained.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what the aspect, and that's the heart of the JRPG is that you
You're
play
in
them
for the
for
long
hours and hours. And I feel like that's I've been let down in the last I would say 10 years really.
Yeah.
Games coming out.
Basically, that is what I mean whenever I'm talking about JRPGs old versus new. I'm not saying necessarily go directly back to how it was in the 90s, but there's a reason that those games are classics and stand the test of time. Take some cues from them, like Tales of Symphonia.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for Final Fantasy XV to take some cues from them because I love JRPGs. But I really don't want to see them become a joke, which they kind of are right now. There are very few things that JRPGs need.
Yeah.
You need an interesting combat system, you need a good story, likable characters, and a good villain.
Yep.
If you get those four things right, you have the makings of a good game. Alright guys, if you like this, like this on YouTube, comment, subscribe if you want. Be sure to tell us your
comment Josh RPGs.
Be sure
Hashtag Josh RPGs.
Be sure to tell us what your favorite JRPGs are in the comments, and if you hate JRPGs because you're a racist, be sure to tell us that too.
Trump RPGs.
Hashtag Trump RPGs.
Shots fired.
Yeah, that's another one. That's a different segment.
Alright guys,
But yeah,
thanks.
see you guys.